Hey, what's going on, peeps? Listen up.
Knowledge bombs after knowledge bombs after knowledge bombs.
Was that everything you thought it would be?
And more.
The Top to Bottom podcast with Keenan and Becc is starting in 3, 2, 1.
This episode of Top to Bottom is sponsored by Noted Analytics. Are you tired of losing sales opportunities to the status quo? Not seeing meaningful information in CRM to help close deals? Empower your team with Noted Analytics, the first guided selling for CRM platform that uses sales methodologies like gap selling, Medic, and others to revolutionize the way revenue teams capture, evaluate, and measure sales process effectiveness. Start increasing win rates, shortening sales cycles, and growing average sales prices today. Check it out at notedanalytics.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Sales Top to Bottom. I'm your host, Keenan, and I'm here with the lovely Becc Holland. Becc, you were telling me that there's no such thing as credit or credit scores in Paris. Why is that?
I don't know. It's
Does that
very.
help you?
Hey, what?
Does that help you?
Yeah, a little bit. They're like, she looks like she buys too many clothes and she can't make rent, so we're not going to rent to her.
See-through clothes. See-through clothes, nonetheless.
What kind of? Oh, so they're like, yeah, we think we trust you a little bit with some money, so you can have some, but don't overdraft. And I'm like, this feels very. And how they rent, they're kind of like, I like you, and you kind of remind me of my daughter a little, so I think I'll rent my place to you. I'm like, this feels very non-paperworky. Paperworky.
All right, there you have it.
Not a lot of structure.
That probably drives you insane, Becc.
It oddly enough. Oh, I figured else out. Then we transition in. The washing machines.
They don't wash anything.
No, they do.
You wouldn't know it. Ooh.
3.5 hours. And 2.5 hours to dry. So all in, one load of laundry, 6 hours. So
wait. Don't they buy their washing machines from GE and freaking Maytag and the same shit we do?
Electricity, want to save the planet. They're conscientious, not like us.
Wow.
So here's the thing. I used to wonder why, in my head, like French people are like in a park, walking around, like laying on the grass, reading a book.
You're waiting for their laundry to get done.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, They're eating yogurt in a glass container. It's completely impractical. They're waiting for their laundry or their ID card to come in.
All right. Well, on that note, by the way, let's welcome Christian. Christian is taking over for Min today. Christian is our guest producer. How you doing, Christian?
I'm a little offended that you referred to Becc as lovely and not me, but I'll get over it.
Wow. Interesting. Okay.
All
right. Well, the lovely freaking Christian Embry. There you go. The lovely Christian. So where are we going today, Christian?
Today, we're going to start off, as you guys always do, with the first segment, Email Teardown.
Email Teardown.
Good job.
All right. This is the segment where Becc and Keenan tear down emails that were sent to them. So, Keenan, you're up first. What do you think of this? It says, quickest of questions, Keenan. Hello, Keenan. Landed on Sales Growth's website and wanted to reach out to you. I help B2B SaaS companies make the most of the traffic that's landing on their page by helping them stand out from the competition from a conversion rate optimization perspective. This is done by revamping your UX UI in a way that your users remember every time they log on, why they don't move to the competitor's offer. Can I send more info on this? Thanks.
No, you can't send more information on it. No. And here's the problem. Here's the problem with everybody pay attention with product-centric selling. He said he went to my website and said he saw it. That's all he said. He said he saw the website, right? Mm-hmm. And then he went right into what we help companies do. At no point in time did he share anything about how my website may or may not be, what the word did he use? More interesting and more intriguing? And what was the word he used? It's hard to read.
Reach conversion rate optimization.
Yeah, converting. Like he didn't do anything to even ask me if it's converting. He didn't give me a conversion number. He just went straight out of the gate and was saying, well, I can get you more conversion. And we help these things with better UX UI. Didn't say anything about my UX UI. I think my UX UI is great. I think it's fantastic. Maybe shit, but I think it's great. So he did nothing to get me to think something was wrong, right? Everybody pay attention. That email did nothing to get me to think something was wrong. Becc?
Not a lot I would add. There's a lot of weird grammar in here. And the biggest thing, or two biggest things, then we'll transition. But one of them is I landed on a sales growth website and wanted to reach out to you. And I'm like, but why? Why did that cause you to reach out to him?
Yep.
You have to tease out a reason. So like, I see people saying like, oh, well, you need a reason for outreach. And they're like, oh, well, the reason for outreach is I viewed their profile. I'm like, but why? Why does that make you think that they have a problem that you can solve? And so if you can't connect those dots, you're not solving for anything by saying this is the reason why when it's not a real reason. The other thing, tactically, I just got out of an email teardown, oddly enough, and I saw this same thing. P.S. Some of the SaaS we worked with are blank, blank, and blank. I'm like, it shouldn't be P.S. We're awesome, and here's why. I don't care who you work with. I don't care who you are. I don't care what company you're with. I don't care what you do. I don't care how well you do it. What I care about is if, and I mean if, you solve problems for someone like me and a problem that you think that I have, start there or don't start at all.
So you know what too, Brett, because I heard you talking that jumps out at me, is this lacks credibility. Some people have the luxury of seeing a product that they can impact before the sale. And so the more credibility you have in being able to point something out or identify or show me something that I wouldn't know is brilliant, but not everybody has that. So when you're in an industry like this, where you can see someone's website and you could literally show them where something is wrong and build credibility and you don't do it, you're a dumbass.
Yeah. And I will say most of the people that I talk to, they'll be like, well, what if you don't have one of that? Oh, something like that. In every single situation, I've been able to walk through with them. And I'm like, but you do.
Yes.
My experience, most of them do.
Yeah.
Well, last I checked, we're not a B2B SaaS company either. So
I bet he was going after Noted. But like an idiot, he wasn't paying attention. But as you were, continue.
All right. This one was sent to Becc. The subject line is 10% of the cost of traditional staffing fees. Becc, hiring passive talent just got easier. Rollbot is pioneering passive talent, surfacing the other 75% of the workforce who don't apply. Let us help you woo your ideal candidates and schedule the first interview. Best. What do you think, Becc? What do you think?
Like, your picture is as big as your marketing ad. And it's a marketing ad sent as a prospecting email. And it says 10% of the cost of traditional staffing fees. But I'm not hiring traditional staffers. I'm not hiring at all.
And you will never hire. Becc doesn't like employees, everybody.
And I'm like, dude, I don't know where to start. It's like 10% off. It's like, off what? Off what?
Yeah.
Keenan?
She set you up. I'm sorry.
No, so I didn't take it, though.
Time that I knew, though.
Sales mythology.
I want to hear what Keenan has to say, though.
Nope,
I really
nothing to say.
Too late. For our next section, sales mythology. This is where Becc and Keenan demystify common myths in the sales industry. And the first one is that pain and problem are the same thing. So, Keenan, you want to take this one first?
I don't know if Becc is disappointed she didn't get to go first this time or thrilled.
I'm disappointed in that and that I didn't get your answer on the email. But
there was nothing to that. And really, I was debating whether or not to address the picture, but I was like, I'm just not gonna go down that road right now.
Last thing. Throw in one last thing.
Yeah. So with that, I'm gonna give it to you, Becc. You go first, because I honestly think you do a better job at articulating this than I do. Way better job.
that means a lot. I wouldn't have understood the difference though without you, to be completely clear.
Well, that's why we're a good tandem.
So the difference between a pain and a problem is a pain's anything negative, any negative experience. It could be on any kind of scale, and there's pain literally everywhere. Everywhere. You know, like great instance is I don't believe right now that my video is super clear. That's been happening for the last 5 podcasts that I've been
It's not, just so you know.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a pain.
Yes.
Oh, that sucks. It looks really muddy. I don't know why. A problem is anything you solve or solve for. And so the difference between those two is not all pains are problems, meaning not all stuff that's negative I'm going to solve for it. This camera is a great example. I've known this for 5 weeks. And every single time I log on, I'm like, that really bothers me. It's not really clear. Keenan's really clear. Christian's really clear. But it hasn't been big enough of a pain. Now, if I was like super muddy, like what's the man, like the ice man that you can't find? What's his name? You know what I'm talking about?
Iceman that you can't.
Yeah, the guy that like lives in the forest in the woods that you're super scared of when you're little, but you don't know.
No idea what you're talking about.
You don't know if he exists. Can anyone help me on the comments?
Yeah, I don't know the Iceman. It's over
Not
my head.
Michelin man, totally different man. You know the guy that's out in the forest that you're afraid that's going to gobble you up.
Nope.
Okay. Well,
Never heard of anybody in the forest.
Very fuzzy. So point being, the pain is not big enough in the present. Now, if you couldn't see me, that would make it a problem, meaning I would solve for it. So the pain in the present has to get egregious enough, or the impact.
Sasquatch.
If I don't, Sasquatch. That's what. No, it's another name.
Bigfoot.
It's Bigfoot.
Mm.
And he's gonna gobble you up.
No one's ever talked about Bigfoot coming to get you.
But he's always like fuzzy. You know?
Yes, he's fuzzy. Yes, the
Like,
picture.
I was
The picture. Yes.
fuzzy. Bigfoot
Yes, okay.
fuzzy. I would solve for it, but I'm not. I'm only a little fuzzy.
Okay.
And so I'm like, I haven't solved for it, even though it's been a problem for the last.
No, it's been a pain. It's been a pain.
Sorry, it's been a pain for the last 5 podcasts, but I have not solved for it. Why? The pain's not bad enough.
Yes.
And so people get stuck in Painville, and I'm like, you're.
Can we say this, Beck? It's not that it hasn't gotten bad enough. It hasn't manifested itself into a problem.
Right.
So the fuzzy thing is a pain. A slow computer is a pain.
Yeah.
But until that pain manifests itself into a problem, so in other words, something you can't do or something negatively affects you. So if all of a sudden people are saying, I can't see Beck, and they're tuning out of our podcast, that's the problem. They're tuning out to the podcast. So the less people.
Keep going. I have an interesting.
So less people watch the podcast, right? Or if your computer is slow and all of a sudden that you're late getting projects done, right? Or you're not able to deliver on any project. So any project get done, and because of that, then customers stop buying from you, or they don't pay you, or you pay a late fee. Those are problems. But what happens, to your point, is people talk about the pain and start selling the pain, right? Oh yeah, it's blurry. Let me show you the one that's super clear. Let me show you it super clear. Yeah, go.
So here's the opportunity that what's brilliant about what you just said. Maybe I am churning viewers, but I don't know it.
Yeah.
That's where you enter. That I'm like, maybe people, like, I don't watch LinkedIn comments. I don't even know how.
I'm watching.
No one
said you're too blurry yet.
I don't know if viewers are going up or going down. I don't know if that would be the reason why. I don't know if when we repost these clips on LinkedIn, if we've gotten less traction because of that. Mm-hmm. And that is the expertise that a seller could enter. So if you're going off of pain, you're like, hey, we work with people with blurry screens. I'm like, but I haven't solved it yet. So like, it hasn't turned into a problem yet because it's not bad enough. But if you showed me that, did you know that video quality is going to lead to a 30% reduction in viewership, then all of a sudden you're introducing something to me that I didn't know, and potentially widening that gap of pain that I'm like, oh shoot, I didn't know that I was churning viewership because of it. And like, all of that can come in because I didn't know it. And so I'm like, bank on those things. Keenan, you go.
No, that you did it. That's it. So I've been saying it for a long time, and I had to add technical problem to clarify for people. But to me, technical problem is pain. Pain is anything that someone. I'm going to try to make this simple. Pain is anything that is affecting you from a tool or a process perspective. That's a pain, and that's what most people sell to all day. My computer's broken. My car's broken. My navigation doesn't work. The freaking can open is not happening. It takes too long to book a flight. The processes are broken. I don't have visibility. I can't see where I am. All of those are pains. All of those are pains all day long. And what salespeople do is they grab onto one of those pains. Oh, you don't have visibility? Oh, right? They try to sell to that shit.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is what manifests itself out of those pains.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the problems. And if you don't, as you said, stop and take the time to see how does a pain, right, which I call a root cause, how does that manifest itself into a business problem, then you're wasting your time. So you need to differentiate. You cannot, you said it best, Becc, pain is everywhere. Pain is everywhere. So you can't find the pain. You clearly have to differentiate.
All right. Well, the second sales myth actually kind of plays into this one. So it is more time, more money, save time, save money, and leaving revenue on the table are all problems. Becc, what do you think?
They're not. They're benefits. And I hear it in every single last company's pitch. No matter what their product is, no matter who you sell to, it's more time, more money, save money, waste time, waste money, and leaving revenue on the table. Every single product I talk to, they're the same, and they're benefits. A problem is anything that you can't do, a metric that you can't hit, a goal that you can't achieve in relationship to that metric. But if more time for what? More money for what? It only is a problem if I don't have enough time to be able to do something, right? If I have a short amount of time, but I can get everything done, I'm just fine. And I hear it every last company, more time, more money, save time, save money. And I'm like, save it up for what though? Keenan, what do you think?
Saving time is basically the time concept is a process. So that's a pain. That's a root cause, right? Now, the save money, I will flip that to, because that's future state, saving money, right? I'll flip that. That's a future state to spending too much money. Okay. So spending too much money is also a root cause or a pain, because that is that's a process. Now, you can tell me how much too money is and how do you define too much money, I'll call that a problem for some people.
I can't.
Watch. Look.
I'm like, too much money. So
Hold on. It depends on what you're selling. So it's not a problem for everybody, which I agree. But if I am a company that is a process redesign company, and I realize that a process that you're doing is costing you 33% more than it should, that's a business problem that I can solve here. If I'm somewhere else, no. Because here's the bottom line. I may do that process and it doesn't change the output, but it saves you 33%, right? Or let me flip it. It keeps you from wasting $300,000 on that process. That is a problem. So it just depends on what you sell. But in the main, I'm going to agree with you. And I'll do the same thing with revenue. If you're a sales training company, or if you sell a particular SaaS that specifically addresses improving revenue, so the problem is they're not making quota, then the problem is they're not making enough money, they're making quota. That's a real problem because that's how they're measured. So that product does it. But if you're a manufacturer, he didn't buzz me. That was nice. You can buzz me.
No.
I'll finish it, but buzz me. You got to buzz me. If you do something that indirectly affects revenue, then that's not a problem you're solving.
So I don't see it that way. I don't agree with you. And
Well-
this is why for two things, and we can move on if we want.
Everybody mark this day.
Number one, if you're saying
23, March 3rd, Beck does not agree with me.
so, I believe that too much time or too much money and all of that is relative. Meaning, I'm like, too much time compared to what? If I can still hit all my financial goals, then it's not too much time because I can still do everything that I need. Now, if I believed dead on that you do the exact same thing for 33% less, I would say hypothetically, fine. But here's my problem with it. I don't believe that.
Okay, I agree. But you don't
sure.
disagree with me. You're not disagreeing with me. You're too focused on the future state.
Let me finish. I don't believe that it's the buyer usually. And it's usually going to cost me a disintegration cost and then a reintegration cost and the risk that you might not be able to do it just as is. And here's the thing, Keenan. I see every seller selling like this. Hell, that email was the same thing, 10% off. And I'm like, off what, dude? And I'm like, even if I am using that service, to me, 33%, 10% is not worth the risk unless I can't do something that I could do with that 10% savings, in my view.
Yeah, okay, but okay, listen, you're too much in the
You're not. What's he gonna do? Fly here to beat me up? So.
No, where you're really focused on the future state, and I agree with you that saying I'm going to save you is not a problem.
Or but if you're wasting 33%, or we could get
if you're spending more than X on XYZ or whatever, and I'll walk you through again how. In certain products, I didn't say it's always a problem. So
give me an example. Give me an example.
I told you if I'm a process re-engineer, and so if I know that going into let's say a warehouse management process, and I know that traditional warehouse management processes do these things this way, and because they do them this way, it costs them an extra 20% of what they're selling.
Consulting redesign. But what's an example of a hard product? Like I use a toothbrush,
I don't think there is one of a hard product because I just told you, I literally said it, some businesses, that is a real problem. Not all businesses. And so I agreed with you that in most cases when they run to revenue, when it's indirect, that's stupid. But in some cases where my whole business is built on that concept of that's a problem.
I still believe in my core that I'm like, even if I'm wasting 33% budget, I don't care unless I can't.
Okay, that I agree with. That's the impact. I agree with that. I agree with that.
Number, or I can't do something else.
I agree.
Use
That's
that to solve another problem that I need. And like, to me, I understand that it's a benefit to me, but I'm like, it's not. In my head, I'm like, risk averse. That if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay.
If I can still do everything, even if you told me like, hey, Beck, we could save 10% off on your Wi-Fi, for instance, I would be thinking, hey, setting up that Wi-Fi was already hard enough as it is. I wasn't the expert, and it works. So,
because that 10% is only $3 a month. But anyways,
if it was bigger, to be honest,
you guys are paying Min, but you need to up his stakes. I don't know how he just cuts you guys off like that. But we got to move on to our next section, which is
take it or leave it.
Okay. This is the segment where I introduce common sales tactics, and Beck and Keenan let us know whether they would take it or leave it. So the first one, asking closed lost leads to provide feedback on your sales process. Beck, what do you think?
Leave it. I think it's cheesy, and usually the only reason that people are doing it is to get the person to re-engage so that they can close them. Is why I'm a hard leave it. Now Keenan's mad, but my I was like, I can take a stand if I'm international.
No, I'm leave it. Now, it's not your buyer's job to critique your selling process.
Oh, man.
It's just not their job. Now, that being said, if you have a really good relationship with them, right? So if if you were selling to someone, Christian, and I knew that person really well, let's say I'd worked with them somewhere else, or we had worked with them, a while back before you got on, and they said no, I would absolutely go to see or whatever. Like, hey, what happened, man? Like, I would absolutely do that. But outside of that, as a normal course of action, absolutely not. Leave it.
So what about win-loss companies, though, that conduct analysis for teams?
No, I'm still saying no.
Okay.
Becc?
I'm still a no too. I'm still a no because I don't
even trust them.
I don't believe that buyers will tell you the truth. And I don't believe also that buyers know why they didn't do it 100%. They're not like, oh, well, that was the moment that made me believe. Like I don't believe that they know.
Okay. Well, the second one, Keenan, telling stories to your buyers in discovery, take it or leave it.
I'm not going to pull a Becc. I'm not going to say teave it.
But it's okay.
Yeah, I'm going to say leave it. I'm leaving it. Yeah, generally speaking, this is one, I guess Becc would call it a teave it. This is one that is situational. There, I would say generally say leave it, because if I say take it, idiots will fuck it up. But every once in a while, during a discovery, there is an opportunity to tell a very short story, and I'm not even sure it's a story, to reinforce something the client just said or to answer a question the client asked you. So that's why it's a teave it with an asterisk. I mean, sorry, a leave it. Leave it with an asterisk.
It was a teave it.
Becc, what do you think?
I'm a leave it, simply for the reason I don't think you should be telling your buyers anything in discovery, a la Cap. I don't think you should be telling them, and it's way too slippery of a slope, in my opinion. And if people start telling things, and why not tell them about your product, and why not tell them how you solve it? And you just start telling. I'm like, if you are talking, you're losing, because you're supposed to be gathering data in discovery and diagnosing in discovery. So I'm a leave it.
Okay, so Chaz Puleo just said, what we typically hear is, so here's my answer, fuck no. Fuck no. I'm sick and tired of what we typically fucking hear. Nobody wants to hear what you typically hear. Throw that shit away. Flush that fucking shit. I can't even see where in the conversation, unless you want to transition to your thing, we typically hear. I can't get my arms around that. If you typically hear something and you want to make that a statement, quickly turn it into a fucking question. So let me help you all out right here, right now. I'm triggered. We typically hear that customers spend an additional 33% when ordering overseas. Okay, fucking great. Let me help you out, everybody. Sell that. Would you mind sharing with me what your typical spend is when you buy overseas? Shut up.
Preach.
How fucking easy was that?
We typically work, it's just dripping in technique. We typically, and I'm like, shut up, Brendan.
God, it just drives me insane. So, yeah, I had another thing I wanted to bring up. I'm going to get buzzed now. But
go.
What was the question, Christian? What was the question again?
You shouldn't listen to the sound of my sweet sauna voice.
I know. What was the question? Repeat the question again, quick.
It was telling stories to your buyer and discovery.
Oh, I can't remember what it was. It was a little piece. You can buzz me.
We typically, no, don't buzz them. No, we help. I'm just going to play dead fish.
It was before that, though. You said something that really triggered me. I know what it was. You said, don't tell them anything. That's what it was. And I'm there's an exception to that rule. And I do this a lot very, very, very well. And I don't do it all the time. Again, you have to see it coming. But there are times that I uncover a problem that is not big enough to solve, right? Or it could even be a root cause, like a pain that isn't big enough to solve, but I know it could be part of something else. So what I do is I will actually give them a solution they can take away on their own from that call. So I will say, listen, I'm not convinced that we can solve this or whatever the case. So I said, or I might even say, before you go any further, I just heard you walk through this. Let me make a suggestion. Regardless of whether or not you go with training or regardless of whether or not, I would highly suggest that your team does, or you guys go in. I do that often. And people are blown away because I'm giving them something free. I've recognized there's a problem. I'm telling them how to solve it, and then we come back. So I do say you can tell them in those situations.
Is that in the middle or at the end of the call?
It's when I hear it. Now, 90% of the time, you're not going to hear that early. So it's anywhere between the middle and the end. And again, this is not premeditated. This is not a tactic. It's I'm listening intently and I hear them say they do something that's really, really fucked up. And I'm like, guys, regardless of whether or not you buy training, this right here is killing you. So let me recommend you do the following. Mm-hmm. Make sense?
Yeah. And wait, was I the buyer in that case? Does it make sense to me? So you stop your buyer too.
Yeah.
And they're like, and they feel like clammed up. They're like, no, but I wanted to keep going.
No, I stop my buyers all the time.
But I'm saying if you stop your buyer to tell a story about how
you tell a story, you shift
right.
it. Sorry.
Stop with the stories. Or the regular, I was talking to Cassie the other. I'm like, shut up and ask a question and go deeper. You don't have enough time. Mm-hmm. I'm like, there is no way. Because I'm like, I am diagnosing fast. Yeah. And I can do it in 30 minutes, barely. And that's me. That I'm like, I'm book girl, right? So I'm like, I don't know how someone could do it faster than 30 minutes. Like usually I'm like chomping at the bit. So I'm like, any time for stories.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it just communicates to them that you're just going to talk. You're just going to.
Agreed.
I used to live in Cincinnati too. I'm like, I don't give a shit, Brendan. I don't give a shit where you go.
We've got to get going on to our next segment, which is
the inbox.
This is the section where Becc and Keenan answer questions from the audience, but I don't have the amazing little mailbox that Min does. So if anybody watching has questions, drop them in the chat. I'll start you guys off with something I'm just curious on. What's something significant that you've changed your perspective on in the last 6 months as it relates to the world of sales? Keenan, why don't you start us off?
Okay, I was reading Chaz's response. Sorry. Ask the question again.
What's something significant that you've changed your mind on in the last 6 months as it relates to sales?
Nothing. Now, what I'll say to this is I'll be open. Becc probably knows this well. You probably know it really well too, Christian. Once I see something that could be changed or is wrong, I'm pretty open and I'll dig and I'll do my homework and I'll build a case and I'll switch or I won't switch. But once I've switched, I don't just switch again or change my mind right away. Like, because I've taken so much time to formulate that opinion, it's not on a whim. You got to bring some serious shit to the table. Sometimes that works well. Sometimes it doesn't because I can get too ingrained. But generally speaking, I don't just move like it. If you can pull something back, I'm like, ooh, there's something here, and I'll go fast. But it's not. I get pretty deep, so you have to peel a bunch of layers to get to the meat to show me something needs to change. And considering I've been doing this so long with sales, and I'm in this every single day, if I think something needs to change, and I learned that 6 months ago, all of you would have heard about it already. So, all right, no, my head hasn't changed. It hasn't changed. What I've always believed. I'm just highlighting it. So never mind. Nope, nothing's changed 6 months.
All right, Becc.
I wouldn't say this was a change, but you said significant, correct?
Yeah.
So I think the two things that have shifted for me, it was a good question, by the way. Mm-hmm. It's a good question. I think what's shifted in degree for me is my view of how much I believe that the buyer values the unknown, what they don't know. And so I've almost shifted my discoveries to that entirely. Like, I'm like, yeah, okay, give me the pain. Like, I need it as a piece, but I am I'm not so much after just quantifying a gap. I'm after adding to it for their sake. And so my perspective used to be, yeah, like let's define it. But I think there is my experience. There's so much they don't know.
Yep.
And once I started just like kind of like you were mentioning, Keenan, like pulling at that thread of how much they don't know or how much they believe that's actually incorrect, I started realizing that this cord ran deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so my knowledge on how much misinformation that they had or how much misinformation that they never had has grown so big. And so my pursuit has shifted to almost the unknown entirely. And the last thing I'll say is my view of how sick they are of technique and sensitive they are of technique has massively grown over the last 6 months. When I see people off record and they can tell all the techniques, like, you know, I think my assumption was they could tell some, but no, they really can tell.
Well, speaking of techniques, we got a question from Scott.
Okay, here, I want to preface that question. Good catch. Okay. So, Scott, listen to me. Scott is obsessed with disc. Every show he comes on, he talks about someone's disc or talks about disc or tells the answer question on disc. So I'm going to do that, but then you're going to stop. Then you're going to stop. Okay. You're going to stop pushing disc.
What are you on the disc scale, Keenan? I'm going to guess a D-I.
I'm a D. Yeah.
Yeah. Big D, D-I.
All right. So go, Christian.
Oh, go ahead. Answer the question.
No, ask the question. I just said it's going to be about disc, but that's so everybody knows what it is.
Well, Scott seemed like he was asking Beck's perspective on how disc plays a role in the sales process.
Or Keenan, do you want to answer first? I think
he asked you specifically.
Okay. It's a great question. That was selfless of you. I think all psychology is interesting to me. Disc was interesting to me. I do think that it comes into play. Like, for instance, I am very high D and I'm also very high I. I've got a lot more I in me than I would guess that Keenan has. But I notice that we're okay challenging one another. Like, that doesn't, it's a style of communication, you know, that we're like, a confrontation is okay to us, right? Which if you got an S in the room and a D in the room, like the S's are going to run away from confrontation. So just naturally, it's easier for me. I do think it's an interesting point to think about. But if I were to make a list of, even from the psychology view, all the interesting things to think about, disc scale would be near the bottom. And if I were to make an even bigger list of the things that are important within the sales floor, it would be like number 497 on a scale of out of 500. Like, it would be that low on the things that are important. So when people are, and it was all the rave whenever I graduated in college, it's going to date me, but I graduated in 2008, and spin and disc in Meyer-Briggs were very, very big. And I got into it very, very heavily. And it just doesn't hold the lion's share. You know, if you're saving someone from walking into oncoming traffic, it doesn't matter if they're an S and you're a D. It matters that they don't run into a car, right? So I think if you're thinking about that, I'd say a 99.9% chance that you're not thinking about all of the other things that are much more important within discovery would be my genuine view. But that's a great question. Keenan, what's your take?
Out of fairness, I was 40 in 2008. so and I remember going through that stuff, and I remember other ones. What does the I stand for again?
It's not introvert. It's like
it's analytical. It's on the analytical side, right?
No, C is analytical. S is like sympathetic. I is like intuitive, I want to say, or innovative.
Scott, like, is it intuitive?
Marketing buyer persona. They think very heavily. They're always in the clouds.
Yeah.
You know, they like to dream a lot, and like, you know, so I have a lot of that in me too.
Yeah. No, me too.
I want to say it's intuition or intuitive.
Okay. So again, I'm with you. Now, I'm going to asterisk this, right? I'm going to throw a little, fucking humility out here. I don't know enough, but what my gut is My intuition is telling me, and what I've experienced.
Influence. It's influence.
Influence. Okay. What my gut is telling me is, at the end of the day, everybody has a different personality, and you just have to have enough EQ to recognize if my personality is fucking with that other person. Basically, the bottom line. And if I'm someone who generally runs from, let's say I'm an S and I run from conflict, but I'm trying to sell, and I see that this person is engaging me in some type of conflict because they're a D and they want more information or they want to be convinced, it's upon me to recognize that from an empathy standpoint or an EQ standpoint and fucking lean in, right? So to me, it's more about EQ and recognizing where you are as opposed to styles and stuff like that, because we got to get shit done. And I'm just tired of everybody dissecting everything under the sun and not starting to focus on getting shit actually done. You know what I'm saying? So I'm with you. I wouldn't ignore it, but there's a whole bunch of other things I'd focus on besides that.
Yeah, I think the only time it would come heavily into play is like if you were a therapist, right? And
Yeah.
style was really important, right?
Yeah.
But like
Yeah.
other than that, I'm like, to your point, like pick it up on EQ. Know when someone wants to move on. Like I'm an I. Keenan doesn't have a lot of that.
I'm being told it's interpersonal.
So it says influence. On
okay.
But,
Arun,
like,
I don't know.
I like to dream a lot. And then Keenan's like, hey, let's get something done. And so like you should, if it's your prospect, you know, if you're in France, speak French if you can. If you're in Germany, speak German if you can. Like, notice it in the room. But it's not a game changer. I used to think it was.
Okay. So now here, I want to do this too. I think Scott does too. Scott's pretty passionate about it. So by the way, I wasn't trying to never mind. I'm done qualifying in my life. Okay. I like Christian, do the med pick question. This one, I like this section, giving people here more time to ask questions, and then we'll go.
What do you like or hate about MedPick from Greg? Keenan, start us off.
Yeah. So hate's a strong word. So I'll say this. I don't hate MedPick. Okay. I don't hate MedPick as a theory. What I hate is the amount of emphasis people put on it. What I hate is how much people think it actually has value across the whole selling process, right? So I always screw up the pick, but for everybody's reminder, it's metrics.
Economic buyer.
Wait, what is he again?
Economic buyer, decision criteria, decision process, paper process. Then what's the second P? It's oh God. I can't remember the second P.
Okay, so
but anyhow, it's I want to say implication, and then it's champion, and then it's I can't remember what the second P is though.
Yeah. So if you look at all of those, with the exception of metrics and implication, the rest of it is nothing but transaction oriented.
Yeah.
It's all about the transaction.
Mm-hmm.
And it has nothing to do with change management.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, is the economic buyer important? Yeah, you eventually got to figure out who it is, of course. But that's not that important in the main scheme of things. When you're trying to get someone to change, you eventually have to find out, but it's certainly not a qualifier, right? Decision criteria, yep, it's important. We actually talk about it in the book. We talk about it in the training. That's important. Buying process, yes, that's important. What is all that? But at the end of the day, that's all the transaction. And all of sales has been leaning on this idea that we're trying to manage transactions, and they wonder why we lose. We're trying to manage change, and there's no place in Medic at all that actually talks about change. Now, some really savvy people may apply the metric section to that and the implication section to that, or whatever the I is. I think it's implication. Outside of that, right? Outside of that, there's nothing that talks about change. So all the stuff that Becc was talking about, right? What's the problem? What's the impact? What's the root cause? What's the desired outcome? How is that stuff measured? What happens if you don't change? What's the cost of it? Like, none of that shows up in PIC. Now, I'm sure some smart people throw it in there, but when you teach that shit, it's non-existent. So it drives me crazy at how much the business world or the sales world is leaning on this transaction-oriented method that really only correlates to closed deals, does not the reason people close deals. Go, Becc.
Yes. So what's interesting is people will say, they'll be like, yeah, well, MedPick is not a closing methodology, or BANT is not a closing methodology. And I'm like, it technically isn't, but it is because people are using it as one. They're looking at that chart and they're going, oh, I need this information. So what I should be doing in a sales call should be asking them for this information. Do you have budget? Do you have authority? Do you have a need? Do you have a timeline? And that
can you share your decision process? What is
Correct.
the paper process? Could you watch this? Could you identify pain? That's the eye all the way back to pain. Yeah, my pain is my fucking thing is fuzzy. That's not going to sell a deal.
So it has become a methodology is just a method of which you're going about something. So when people look at that and they're going, oh, okay, I need this information. This is what's quote unquote important for me in the deal. So their discovery process, quote unquote, discovery process, I'm going to be generous and give that term, is just them asking them dead on those questions. Now, I do think it's really interesting. I do think, and I'm going to put myself out there, I do think that most of the methodologies out there have, MedPick, in my opinion included, are some of the most deleterious, dangerous things to sales history of all time. And the reason
on that back, that's huge.
Is people are they're just asking those questions dead on at the expense and at the, completely at the expense of the buyer. And so the only saving grace in there that I believe is very important in discovery is metrics. But how they're viewing it is what metrics are you after, not you should know what metrics your buyer is typically gold on. And there is a big difference.
Yes.
There is a big difference. One requires some level of education, intel, research for you to know that a marketer is geared on MQLs typically for demand generation, for instance. But a metric, how they're defining or how I've seen it used is what metrics are you after? And I'm like, you're in a better spot than most people aren't defining anything. But I'm like, these methodologies, they weren't methodologies, they were frameworks of things that people need to acquire because people diagnosed back in the day and they thought like IBM, for instance, came out with BANT. They punted out BANT. They're like, these are the things that we believe from a quantitative perspective are things that are going to cause closed won, because these correlated among the data set that we have for closed won. But I'm like, okay, like economic buyer, for instance, what are you supposed to do other than this is an annoying question. Then I'm like, Keenan, other than yourself, who would feel left out on the next demo discovery call? And it's a self-diagnosis question.
Yeah.
To make it even worse. So I'm like, I think it's a valuable framework to think about. I think about if I have access to power. I do. It rolls through my brain.
Yes.
But if that is your methodology, and I will challenge people because 100% of the time that I've seen, it is. Yep. It is. It's what you're after in the room. If you don't have a methodology above that, then it is your methodology. And it can be the most damaging to your buyer because you're hinging. Best case scenario, you're hinging off of things that they believe and things that they know only.
Yep. 100%.
I got to turn on some more lights. And
then we're going to go on. What sales methodology do you recommend?
Keenan, I'm turning on more lights. Hold on.
Beck's and Patty. It's getting dark. All right, we need to move on to the next one anyways.
Yes, we do. I'm being nice. So
yes, you're doing a good job.
The challenge.
We're on the challenge.
His mission in life is to get me to wear a Gap selling t-shirt.
Amen, baby. Amen.
Me too. So this is the segment where Becc and Keenan break down a challenging subject within the sales industry. And the first subject is going to be how to speak with relevance to your buyers. So, Becc, why don't you start us off?
Yeah. Okay. So I hear relevance defined a lot. I never hear relevance defined. I hear it said a lot. They're like, speak with relevance. I'm like, all right, Brendan. All right, personal brand meme guy, selfie guy on LinkedIn. What's relevance? So the first step to relevance, in my opinion, is knowing what your buyer is metriced on. So this is very apropos to our last conversation. The first piece of relevance is relevance being defined as in relationship to their metric. So the first piece of relevance is viewing everything in the context of a problem that would be created in a relationship to their metric and a root cause to that in relationship to their metric for this buyer persona in specific. So I'll give an example, then I'm going to transition to Keenan. He can give a step 2 or whatever it is. There's a certain amount of terms that people use in Europe when they're not US native speakers. So I've noticed, for instance, when they've learned like British English, like they'll say like, oh, the queue, they're forming a queue outside. And so what would we call that, Keenan, for instance?
A line.
Yeah, we'd call it a line. And so I know that they are a British English speaker by the way that they say that because of a small term. And so I'm like, if you aren't even on the trajectory of knowing like the basic terms, you know, of even how to speak a language, so to speak, but then even more so, are you communicating in a way with that they believe that you not only know them, but you know them better than they do? And that hinges off of understanding their metrics. So that's my first piece. And then Keenan, I'm going to go to you. What do you think about relevance?
So I don't know that I have much to add on that one. So to me, relevance is exactly what you said, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, what I would add is it's understanding their space. So it's not just understanding the metrics, but also how the metrics are achieved, what is a common threat to the metric.
Mm-hmm.
So it's how are the metrics? So what are the metrics? How are the metrics traditionally achieved?
Mm-hmm.
What are some common threats to the metrics? How do people address those threats to the metrics?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then, so all of that needs to be understood. That's relevance. But then if you can bring an anticipatory nature or a predictability nature to it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea that says, look, based on all of this, it's not uncommon that you may be expecting or you could
Mm-hmm.
see this as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that you're able to just be in their space with them without mm-hmm. having to attach your product or service. That to me is really how you do it.
Yeah. So how would you go about gaining that?
Gaining that credibility?
Yeah, or no, that understanding. I could honestly give a crap about credibility. I think that's an offshoot of when
you don't give it. Oh, credibility comes from doing all
right.
of that stuff. Yeah.
Right.
So I think there's a macro and there's a micro. From a micro perspective, you need to sit down with product management the product management team and be like, all right, hey, yo, you built this damn thing. What was going on with the CRO? What was going on with the head of security? What was going on with, I don't know, with the investor relations group that we felt building this was good? Tell me about their world, right? How do they use? How should they use this? Why would they use this? What happens if they don't use this? Like, just take time to understand what's going on in the world, right?
Mm-hmm.
And have some curiosity. Once you understand that, then I think it comes to a more macro one that takes more time, and that's just basic business acumen,
mm-hmm.
right? So your ability to say, okay, I understand how investor relations works,
mm-hmm.
but now I have investor relations for Tesla versus investor relations for the AT&T versus investor relations for the airlines. And so now my ability to understand how investor relations is going to affect each one of them differently is business acumen. And that just takes time, right? Investor relations for the Tesla is going to be very different than investor relations for, let's say, the airlines. So the airlines have a whole bunch of, what's the word I'm looking for? Regulation. And they can be out of compliance big time, where that's not quite as big a deal for, let's say, Tesla. So that's all I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
The other one,
we got to move on to the second challenge, which is how do you overcome feeling salesy? Becc, you can start us off.
Stop being salesy.
Well, we're losing people for the first time because we're too long. That's a good message. It's a good note next time.
Wait, what? That we're too long? What do you mean?
People are saying, hey, this was great, guys, but I got to go. First time that's ever happened.
Really?
Yeah.
Stop being salesy, be an expert instead would be my push. So people are like, well, I don't want to feel sleazy. I'm like, but you are sleazy. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I don't want to feel manipulative. And I'm like, but you're manipulating. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking about the next question to get them to feel in a certain way, then you're manipulative. Stop having that in your freaking brain. The reason that you're nervous when you pick up the call is because you're thinking, what question do I ask to manipulate the person next? That's why you have all of that fire. The one thing that I'll say, and then I'll kick it to you, Keenan, is for the relevance piece, because I think both of these topics are in tandem with one another. Like, instead of spending your time learning techniques or empathy or personality styles or any of that crap, like, learn the business acumen. So I think how to build to speak French fluently, you have to spend time speaking French, and you have to spend time learning it. It takes 580 hours studying to learn any language. Just studying, not even talking about practicing, going out. You have to screw up 1,000,000 times. So it's like, it's the same thing for your buyers, but that doesn't mean that you should just not do it. It doesn't mean you should just not do it. So I'm like, the thing that I think that was left out that Keenan, I see you do a lot, is like trigger-based stuff. Did something just happen, or is an event going to happen that's causing a new problem in the present? I think that's the other piece of relevance that people don't think about enough. Like, is for the airlines, for instance, and you could smoke me here, honestly. It's like, is there a new regulation that's going to go into place in whatever Q4 that is going to cause a problem in the future if you don't change today? And what are those for your buyers? And learn those for your buyers before, like, learn so your buyers don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
Just like doctors learn so patients don't have to. Keenan, what are you going to say?
I want to give props to Greg Christensen. He says, just be real, curious, intentional, more listening. You don't feel cheesy that way. I'd also, he said, Casper says, surrender the outcome. I like that. But mine is simple. It's really simple. Stop selling.
Mm-hmm.
Start helping.
Mm-hmm.
If you are genuinely in a helping mindset,
Mm-hmm.
you can't feel sleazy.
Mm-hmm.
They don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, I used to use, and I've actually seen you do this as well, Beck, where the example I use is a woman's about to step across the road, and a car's coming, and she's got her headphones on, and she's not paying attention.
That was me.
That was you, right? And she's about to step into the street, and I don't even think twice about grabbing her. Not only do I not think twice about grabbing her, while grabbing her, I accidentally touch or grab or squeeze things that are quote unquote inappropriate by the social terms. I'm not thinking about that, right? If I grab her boobie, I'm sorry, I'm not thinking about that being bad. I just saved her life,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you can't feel cheesy or salesy when your whole emphasis and goal and intention is to help. But in order to help, you must understand their situation, not yours, their situation.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what people don't do. 90% of you are going in there to sell for you, not for them.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I think they don't see another option, though. I'm like, I used to do that stuff. I really did, until I saw another option.
What option is that, Beck?
Oh, shit, we did miss your birthday. We did miss Keenan's birthday. I don't know, but like.
Yeah, you did miss my birthday. Thanks. We didn't forget yours, though, Beck.
But that's the important one.
Yes, I know. But you didn't get to bring all your purple monsters to Paris with you. All right, that was good.
All right, we got to get moving.
All right.
Okay.
One last thing.
This is the last segment where Beck and Keenan give us just one last thing. So who wants to start off?
Keenan.
All right. So here's my one last thing. Process for process sake. People need to think. You have to think. The reason I'm saying this is every company has them. And if you got to revisit them, you got to bend the rules or you got to change them. So this is a borderline rant, one last thing, but my youngest daughter is 13. My middle daughter is 16. My middle daughter is flying to Whistler for a ski camp, as is my 13-year-old. Okay. United Airlines has a unaccompanied minor policy. If you're under 14, you can't fly alone unless someone is an accompanied minor, which basically means you pay them to have someone take care of them on the plane and all that shit, right? So an adult has to walk them all the way to the plane, sit there with them until the plane leaves the ground, and then somebody on the other side has to be there to meet them at the gate, you know what I'm saying, et cetera. So the whole thing is like name, number. They won't surrender the child until that adult is there. And when the adult drops them off, they have all this paperwork. It's this whole process, which is great when you're 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, right? Here's the problem with United. Her 16-year-old sister, who has her driver's fucking license, can get in a car, drive her to the airport, but cannot be her unaccompanied minor. So I have to pay to, and then I or her mother have to walk with both of them, even though the 16-year-old can fly by herself, and my dad will walk with her. But no, we have to have another adult walk with them both because they won't let the 16-year-old who can drive her to. Government says she can drive to the airport, a license and everything. That's what the processes break down. So I have to pay extra money to have another person at the camp walk her and her sister to the gate, even though her sister's already walking to the gate with her. How stupid is that? That type of stuff drives me insane. Same thing with her 17-year-old sister, right? So it's just dumb. It's you got to understand your process, and you got to make sure they're relevant to all situations.
Oh, so you're saying don't have process for process sake. Like actually look at whether it makes sense.
Yeah. So they should have an exception. Like I don't mind. 13 is still, I don't agree with it. Southwest is 12. Okay, fine. Everybody has their own number. But when I have a 16-year-old who's driving her to the airport, and then I've got to figure out how to get an adult there, it should be 18 or older unless a family member 16 or old. You see what I'm saying? Like, don't make all this extra work when the family's flying together and one of them's old enough to have their damn driver's license, and it's just dumb. It's just dumb. Yeah, don't have process for process sake. Okay.
All right, Becc, your turn.
I don't really have a last thing. The one I was thinking of, I'll say it in a line, maybe two, but and it is the first time and probably the only time I'll say this. I think that people online just need to be nicer.
Woo! That's good, Becc.
To other people. Like, stop taking shots at people just because, like, really ask yourself, and I've had to do this before, like, am I responding in this way just to one up the person and mic drop and look great? You know, or calling them out. And it's a really hard environment. Just be nicer to people. Like, you know, just think of their perspective and think of them as a human, even if they're coming at you and doing something. Understand, just think for a second about their perspective. And I know that's hard to do, and I certainly haven't done it in all cases, but it's just not necessary, and it doesn't make you feel any better. Even if you do mic drop, long run, it doesn't make you feel better, even if you quote unquote won. Neither of you really won. So I just think about, is it needed? Does it progress the conversation? Yeah. Is it needed? Does it progress the conversation? What's your real agenda behind it before you comment, like, build allies, do whatever? You know, I think it'll just help you in the long run.
You know, Becc, I like that a lot. I actually came up with some a long time that I'd like to give you to help articulate that, because it's usually what you do for me. You have one of three options when you respond to someone on social. It can be net negative, neutral, or net positive. So I don't care what it is you're saying. Ask yourself, is this net negative to the conversation? Is this neutral to the conversation? Or is it net positive? That's it. That's simple. And if you say it's net negative and you know you're doing it, then you fucking own it. Yeah. Just stop. Is it net? Because it's not just with names and stuff. Some people take shots and do fucked up shit by attacking the idea or the person in an unconstructive way. You know what I'm saying? So it's real simple. Is it net negative? Is it neutral? Or is it net positive?
Yeah.
I like it.
It affects you, man. It really does affect you, because social media is a big part of our lives. I'm like, just think about it.
Yep. All right, everybody. Well, thank you. That was another episode of. Oh, you want to say something, Becc?
Yeah, Christian, thanks for doing this.
It was my pleasure.
You did a good job, Christian.
Same old crazy.
You did a good job.
You did a great job.
So everyone, this was another episode of Sales Top to Bottom. I'm
Awesome.
Keenan.
I'm back. Hasta lasagna. See you next week.
She said lasagna in French.